very much, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here in this beautiful city, and I'm going to present a presentation which should have been given with a colleague of mine, Peter Brogan, from the BIFM, but unfortunately he's been poorly, so I will do it on myself. But the presentation is also done with Dr. Matthew Tucker, who a lot of you know here, who is my PhD supervisor, and today I'm going to try and talk about building information modelling. Some of you may be very aware of it, some of you may not be so aware of it, but we've tried to benchmark and do some research to find out a little bit more about that. So this is what I'm going to go over to today. I'm going to talk about why our research is important. We've heard a lot today about buildings, we've heard a lot about people, about workplace, and in my view I think all of this stuff needs to be linked. It's all equally important in a way, and I'm going to talk about the role of FM in a BIM project. What do I actually see as a practitioner? I had 20 years of experience as a facility manager working for Serco, one of the big companies in England, and I'm now an academic at Zurich University of Applied Sciences, but actually for me I'm interested in academics working together with practitioners. I'll talk about our partnership in terms of the research, discuss the findings briefly. I won't bore you too much with the statistics, but then I'll talk about the next journeys that I think FMs need to take in terms of moving forward. So just to give you an idea, this is actually a BIM model that's been created of our university in Zurich. It's the Institute of Facility Management in Zurich. Now, it's actually been created by Michele Meslek, who's one of the presenters who was here yesterday doing a poster presentation of one of our talks. And it's a retrospective BIM model, so it's been built after the building's been created. So for me, building information modeling is a radical thing that's hitting our industry. When I told my director 2 or 3 years ago that I was going to take a PhD and I was going to focus on BIM and FM, he told me BIM is not even a topic that should be of interest to FMs. Now it's almost like a landslide technology that's taking over in terms of if you go and you put BIM on the line, you see it happening everywhere. But the crucial thing from my perspective is what is the role of the facility manager in the BIM process? What do we actually do in projects? I used to manage very large construction projects, and I know, absolutely know, if I had had BIM as a process and a technology and a tool, it would have made my life infinitely easier in the future. So in the UK, we've had a drive to change. The government has made a mandate saying if you don't do BIM by 2016, you don't even get onto the contractor list in terms of projects. And so it's been driven radically by the government in the UK. And they have a Construction 2025 construction strategy where they had some very, very strong targets. They're looking at a 33% cost saving across the industry and construction. So it was interesting to me, if you look at the value of the construction market in the UK, we're talking about 107 billion when this report was done. But the UK FM market is estimated to be 155 billion. That's more than the construction market. If you take those two together, there's a potential for an absolutely massive saving. But I'm a bit of a realist. I think we're probably not going to get 33%, but even if we make a tiny fraction, 1 to 5%, we're talking about an economy difference of about 2.6 to 13 billion pounds. So in the UK, we have something called Digital Built Britain. Excuse me, I have a very dry throat, so I'm just going to take a drink. And Digital Built Britain is an organisation that's been set up to look at how we're going to drive change in digitisation in the UK. So BIM is part of that. And for me, what's interesting is that all the construction people are getting loads and loads of experience in BIM. They're using it every day, they're using it in their projects. FMs and clients have sort of been sitting a bit on the sideline and saying, okay, well, how's that going to impact on me and how am I going to manage it? And what's really important for me is to find out how FMs and clients can actually get the information that they need at the end of a building project to actually manage their buildings, because after all, that's the important thing. When you look at research, we're seeing that actually BIM is not being used very much in the operational phase at the moment, about 10% according to some research. But to me, it took a while to get this, that BIM is about information. It's not about the models, it's not about the technology, it's about the information that's embedded within that. But it doesn't matter whether you're talking Digital Built Britain, it's going to be Digital Built Europe. And I would predict in the next 10 to 20 years, virtually all of the industries across the construction industries will be using this technology across Europe. So what's the role of FM in this? When I look online, I see lots of sort of like bits about cost managers or architects or something, but what does BIM actually mean to me as a facility manager, and how is it actually going to help me? So I go back to, I used to do a lot of these projects, and there was this magical world where you built a building and then you got to a point in time and you get the keys to the building and they say, there you go, it's yours to use now. But the problem is, if you look on the left-hand side here, we actually have, in the BIM world, you're going to get 3D graphical models, you're going to get lots of information, you're going to get lots of documents, and somehow as facility managers we need to turn that into processes, services, how we manage cost, how we manage products, and it's not realistic, because what happens is all the people who have the information, when they're building the building, they disappear. And if you're really unlucky as a facility manager, you arrive at that dot where everybody's disappeared and somehow you magically need to pick up the baton and try and turn all of this stuff into helpful information. And that gives us a great opportunity for what we call the death valley of know-how. The amount of time I used to spend with my staff looking for information was absolutely unbelievable. We would waste so much time because stuff wasn't handed across well. So what we actually need to do is to think about what information we actually need and to get FMs involved at the beginning of the construction process so they can make this link across and we actually end up with a professional handover. I won't bore you with all of these terms, but one thing that's very interesting to me is asset management strategies. There's a lot of research that's been done that's saying companies, less than 50% have a written down policy to say how they're going to manage their assets, and yet after people it's the second biggest cost that an organisation will actually meet. So any one of these people, architects, planners, these types of people, they can easily manage BIM projects, but the facility manager is the only person in the middle who actually has a very detailed understanding of a client's requirements, and as some of our other presenters have said, of what the client actually wants from a building to make it actually useful, like Chris said, in terms of buildings. So here are some funny examples, but you know, I've seen this type of crazy thing in my life where you've been to a project and they put the toilet there and then why did they do that? Here are a couple of other examples. So, we've got a step where somebody can't quite be bothered to finish the last 3 steps for the sort of wheelchair. But the one on the left-hand side is my favorite. That's a bubble diagram where somebody said, look here, and the guy on site thought it meant chop a hole in the floor, yeah? So how much money is that going to cost? And I definitely wouldn't want my kids to play on that roundabout, yeah? So, but the guy who's installed the security camera, he's going, great, because somebody's going to give me some more money. I'm going to get paid to move it again, so why should I think and be proactive about it? So BIM to me is quite simply, I call it the garbage in equals garbage out solution, where you put more time up front to actually work out how your building is going to be developed. And the latest in word at the moment is digital twin. It should be a digital twin of what we're going to have in real life. But why it's going to be easy, helpful rather, is because if FMs are involved early in the process, we'll be able to work with the design teams and actually go inside buildings with 3D glasses and actually say, don't put that over there because it'll cost me a load of money because I'm going to need a bit of equipment to come in and maintain it. So it will be very useful. So what I want to do is to move away from, in the past, I had files and files and files got past me when buildings were finished, when they'd be handed over. And we want to move to this, a digitized way of actually doing business in the modern world. When you build a building, you end up with loads and loads of information, yeah? But as an FM, I don't need all that information. I need specific information that's going to allow me to help it. The other realistic thing is I use a CAFM tool to manage my business or manage my assets, not a BIM model. What we need to do is to find a way to join those two things together so that we actually end up with the right information in our tools at the end. I use this model from one of the PAS standards in the UK to talk about it, because I think that if you're going to do BIM, what you need to do is to ask up front the customer, what do you actually want from your buildings? What information do you need? How are you going to manage it? And if you don't do that, it's going to be the garbage in equals garbage out. You're going to be going into a garage, asking for a car, and being disappointed that you don't get the Ferrari with all the nice red bits at the end because you didn't ask for the right car. So, if we have something like an asset management strategy, we should start asking ourselves, how am I actually going to use that? And how am I going to get all this information at the end when it gets handed across? How am I going to use it with my FM organizations? So, for me, it's about making sure we can optimize our assets to make our workplaces better and make the life of our employees and our staff better. So, if you're an FM, where do you start? There are lots and lots of guidance documents around, and if you go online and you type in BIM, you can almost be sort of like crushed by the amount of information. But BIFM have produced something called an Operational Readiness Guide. We have a standard in the UK, 8356, which tells you if you're going to start a project, this is what you should do. But in summary, the way I like to think about it is you should try and have an asset management strategy at the beginning, and you ask your client what they actually need in terms of information. In lingo terms, it's called an OIR and an AIR, which is what information do you need to operate your assets and what information do I need about my assets. But if I use this garbage in equals garbage out, what I'm trying to do is to produce at the beginning a document in the BIM term that we call an EIR that tells the construction team, this is what I want you to do, and this is the information I want at the end of the process. So if I do all of that, then I might just get the right information that I need for my model. So BIFM and Zurich University of Applied Sciences have been working very strongly together, and myself and Dr. Matthew Tucker, who's my supervisor, we've carried out some research in this area. It's been very strongly supported by Mark Bew, who's the head of the Digital Britain package. And what's very interesting to me is he's trying to get everybody on this journey of getting into BIM and understanding what it's about. If anybody is interested in the research, please contact me, or you can go online. All of my research is completely free, and the idea is I was doing it as part of my PhD, was trying to benchmark the industry and find out what's going on. So I will go through the survey findings and give you an idea, but just to give the context, it wasn't just in the UK. We had a lot of findings, 254 responses from 28 different countries, with a range of stakeholders, including facility management contractors, but also other people involved in the whole life cycle of actually delivering a building. So we asked some essential questions at the beginning. Had you heard about BIM at the beginning of the survey? Do you actually believe that BIM will have a significant impact on the industry? When we answered these questions, do you believe that it will help support the industry, and what time scale do you think it will kick into? What we basically came back with is that there's a great belief out there that BIM will actually help at the moment, and people have the perception that it will, but they're not so sure about what the timescales might be. We then asked people, did they actually have any experience of using any of the BIM documents, and generally speaking, we found that the experience was low. But to me, that's not surprising, because I don't think there are yet enough people in the FM industry who are really involved in BIM projects to actually understand how to actually use them. But the positive news is, we asked people, so would you be happy to have a go in a BIM project? Would you be confident about developing some of these documents? And the confidence rates are generally very high among the people. When we actually asked people about general perception and awareness, some interesting points came out. BIM is about a collaborative process, not the technology. So it's about getting a result from a process. It has the value to deliver significant impact to FM, but FMs need to be more familiar with it. We need to help them on that journey. We looked at advantages, and the interesting thing for me is when I did a similar survey 3 years ago, cost was what was talked about. The number one ranked advantage of BIM is perceived now to be strategic decision making about how you're going to manage your assets and use them. And for me, that is a very interesting change. When we looked at the challenges, we found that the co-linkage between how you move data from a BIM system into a CIFMERS system and then vice versa was very strong, but also there was a very strong undercurrent saying we need more training and more help. We talked about I looked at the BIM strategy of the UK. So for example, in the UK, we're already developing level 3 BIM and how we're actually going to do that. And when we actually looked at the results of what people had actually found, a lot of the people were aware of the levels of BIM, but not many people had heard about the strategy of level 3. Again, I don't think that's too surprising because of the international context of the research. We asked people about Do any of their organizations actually have any of these things in place? And again, you can see asset management strategies. A lot of the companies don't have any strategy for managing their assets. Generally speaking, the levels are quite low. And then when we looked at BIM training in organizations, again, our employees would benefit from BIM certification or some form of training. So if you look at guidance documents used by FMs around the world with BIM, there are lots and lots and lots of them. These are some of the ones that got mentioned. But to summarize the findings of the report, and again, this is a very detailed report which is available online from BIFM, so please go and have a look at it. I won't go through all of these, but for example, one of the ones there, 81.1% of people agree that companies that introduce BIM will have an advantage over those who don't. The people who are staying behind, waiting to see if BIM will happen, will be the ones that will lose out, because it will very, very definitely come in the next few years. It's interesting to see that also a lot of people felt that BIM is not just for new builds, but the conclusion of all of this is we need to do more to help our industry. We need to actually try and help the FMs. So what's been happening in the background, the BIFM have been partnering with us, and we've, together with other people, we've produced a range of documents. Again, these documents are available from BIFM if you want. From my point of view as an academic, I don't want to produce something that just goes in a scientific paper that nobody's ever going to read. I want it to be available for practitioners, and these are available online if you want to go and have a look at them. They're quite detailed, and I don't have time in the presentation to talk about them in depth, but if anybody's interested, please come and see me. So the BIFM, and this is on behalf of Peter, they have already a plan. We have a think tank, a group of people who are looking at trying to produce further guidance documents on LCC and how BIM's going to work with CAFM. And they're actually starting to develop some specific training to actually meet people's needs. And it's very nice to know that they're very happy to continue the relationship between Liverpool and ourselves in Switzerland. So, again, I mentioned at the beginning, all of my research is free. It's all available through ResearchGate. And Magella Meslek, who was with us yesterday, she and I have produced a paper for the conference, if anybody's interested in that again. So, just lastly, I want to just show you, this is the model that we've produced at ZHAW. You can see on the left-hand side that the model is essentially a huge collection of objects. Yeah? Those objects, whether it's a table, a window, a door, doesn't matter, they are represented in terms of a digital twin. What you see on the right-hand side is an initial BIM viewing tool, because as an FM, I'm not going to go and learn Revit. I'm not going to go and learn the software to do BIM. What I need is a simple tool that allows me to do that. This is a viewing tool that allows me to, for example, click on this table or whatever, and I actually get all the information about that asset actually in my hand if I'm using a portable device. So this type of technology is going to come on, I think, at a very, very fast rate, and as an FM industry, we should be ready for it. So that's my presentation. If any questions, I'll be very happy.